Okay, you ready? Okay. Well, when I was finished with nursing school, I didn't have a job. And so I had applied to this place up island when I was living in Victoria, British Columbia. And it was about 60 miles to the north of Victoria. So I didn't have any friends. I had a lot of friends in Victoria, but I didn't have any friends up island. All they had available for a job at the time was Saturday and Sunday. So I only had 2 days of work. And they said within about 5, 6 months, they would have a full-time position. But they didn't have a full-time position at that time. And I really wanted to work up there. I had a camper van that was completely camperized. It had a fridge and a stove and a bed and all that kind of stuff, and a porta potty. And so I thought, well, if I live in that camper van until that job comes to a full-time job, then I can afford to do it. And so I advertised in the newspaper and asked if there was anybody that would allow me to just park my van on their property so that I could live up there. And this gal got in touch with me and she said, well, I have some horse property out in the back of our place, and if you want to pull in there, they had a hose that went from their house over to the horse trough, and I could use that water. But I didn't have any electric lines. I didn't have anything else. And so I pulled over there and I parked my van and I set it all up for camping. I had two little dogs living with me, two little poodle dogs. And so there I was for 5 days out of the week, living in that van. And I would go for long walks, and I even planted a garden. I asked her if she minded if I used a little bit of her land, and I dug it up and I planted plants in there. I had my own little garden, and and then
How old were you?
I was 40 because
40.
my kids were already raised and away from home when I finally went to nursing school. And so they were living.
2 years ago, wasn't it?
Thank you. Anyway, I just wanted to get started and get some experience nursing, and I had taken out student loans, so I didn't have very much money. And so I was out there on my own, and then on early Saturday morning, I'd have everything packed up, and I would drive into town, which was about 30 miles away, and I would go to work, and I had arranged with the owners of the place to just leave my van there, because it was my camper van. That's where I lived with the dog. And I would just leave it there in the parking lot. I'd spend Saturday night in the parking lot in my van. And then I'd get up Sunday morning and go to work, and I'd work all day Sunday. And then when I got off of work, I would go out over to the laundromat, and I would get all my clothes washed up at the laundromat. And I would go over to the sanitation area in the campground, and I would clean out my porta potty and get that all ready for the week, and go and do my grocery shopping, and then I would drive back out to this farm, and I'd pull in there and set up my camper van, and that's where I lived. I did that for, well, it was almost 6 months, and then the position came open where I had a full-time job, and so I got myself an apartment and moved into town then. But I lived in the camper van for that long. And it was a lot of fun. I didn't miss having a phone. They didn't have cell phones at that time. I had a post box at the um, post office where I could get my mail. And so that's
What
how
did
I
you do
lived.
for your electricity? I mean, for lights and things. Was there
I had candles.
candles? Okay, well, that's good. I
But
was
you
just-
know, I mean, it just wasn't that difficult. I
Yeah.
mean, I was quite satisfied. You read until it gets dark, and you wake up first thing in the morning, and you just
Mhm.
But
Start to go to sleep.
yeah, that's right. When it
Behave
was dark.
yourself and get up fresh in the morning.
But that's how I lived, and so that was my story.
And I'm sticking to it.
And
Sticking to it.
that was what?
Oh, shoot.
Well, not. It's about 37 years ago that I did that.
than people are doing it nowadays. So
Well, I
too, a
worked
lot
in
more
Duncan,
people.
British Columbia, and I was parked, and the farm was over in Chemainus. And Chemainus was about 30, a little over 30 miles away from Duncan.
So what kind of van was it?
It was a Chevy that had the raised roof added to it.
Like a conversion van.
Yeah, and it had the motor that was in the front there with the big round
Yeah.
loop thing, and so I put a curtain across that, and I had a porta potty, and I put that porta potty up there by that curtain. I put a second curtain so that I could just kind of pull that so I had a little bit of privacy in my little bathroom area, and I had a sink which had a double stainless steel sink. And I had a little refrigerator, just a little half refrigerator, and I had a stove that had 3 burners and an oven,
What did it run off of?
propane.
Propane, your stove
Yeah.
and your,
Yeah, the heater and the stove and everything ran off of propane. So
So did you set the van up like this for you to do it, or you
no, I bought
like
it. I bought it
Okay.
when the kids were in high school.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
I needed a vehicle, and they had this camper van advertised, and I thought, well, that's great because we went out camping a lot,
Uh-huh.
and so that made it really easy because I had one of those fold-down ones. What do they call them?
Pop-up.
Tent trailer.
pop-up.
Yeah, trailer.
No, it was a tent trailer.
Tent
It was a
trailer.
regular old-fashioned tent trailer. It didn't have any top on it. It just had a tent that popped up, and that's what I had. And it was starting to wear out. So when we got this van, then I sold that tent trailer, and we had the van to live in when we went camping. But my one daughter took off to California, Vicky. She took off to California to work on the boats, and my oldest daughter took off to Toronto for her college training, studying massage and shiatsu. And my son was a cook there in Victoria. So that's what I did. That's my story.
That's pretty neat, though, yeah.